Good morning, everyone. I'm, as Richard said, Tony Gunarsson from Ovum. I'm here to talk a little bit about online video, future of TV, subscription services, and things like that. I have a really short presentation, so I'm going to try to stick at it, and hopefully we'll get some questions at the end. So without further ado, I'll just jump straight into it. So as I said, I'm focusing on online video subscription services primarily, and I thought I'd look a little bit at linear services that are now appearing all over the world, as it happens. So just to set the scene, I wanted to talk a little bit about Netflix and SVOD services. I think it's quite fair to say today, with a few years to look back on, that Netflix and SVOD has really paved the way for a huge change in audience viewing behavior and consumer behavior overall. It is only with SVOD, and by that I mean, of course, Netflix primarily, that consumers found a way to comfortably pay for content online. You will recall once upon a time, consumers were buying movies on DVDs. As DVDs started to decline, the industry wanted to find a replacement for that, and transactional VOD, buy and rent, was supposed to replace DVDs. That really didn't happen. Consumers did not take to buying content online in that way, but Netflix came in and really found a model that consumers took to, and it's a model that's been replicated by countless other services on the internet. Cheap monthly costs, access to a big catalog of content. You can switch between content. If you don't like it, you haven't paid for that specific content, and you can sort of do lots of cool things with that. So the age of SVOD, the age of Netflix, has really brought shockwaves across the TV and entertainment ecosystem. Of course, one aspect of this is that premium content has become available outside of the walled gardens of pay TV. So as we've seen Netflix grow from the US, spreading internationally to key markets and beyond. Binge watching as a concept for consumers and for our industry has truly become a mainstream proposition, a mainstream activity. By that I mean not only Netflix is pushing box sets to consumers, but even some of the older TV companies are now pushing binge watching to their viewers as a concept. You might see billboards around London advertising box sets. So I would argue that SVOD is driving an improvement in the delivery of TV. Of course, you got the whole watch wherever, whenever, arguably whatever you want, and of course better curation, better content discovery tools, and so on. And as a side effect of the proliferation of SVOD services around the world, we see that consumers are being encouraged to self-bundle entertainment, and arguably for the first time ever, which is quite interesting. So shockwaves across our industry following rise of Netflix, and as a response to this, TV has begun to reinvent itself. The latest response is through premium subscription linear services. Here's a few logos of those. They range from skinny bundles on the internet, aggregated pay TV channels available through basic packages. You add more services on top, all through monthly subscription, no commitment time, and on the internet solely. Direct-to-consumer services, sports services, and a whole range of other services. Now, these services, which we at Ovum, we came up with the term SLIN, subscription linear. Some others call it linear OTT, and a whole range of different terms. It's not about the terms, but linear pay TV on the internet has come off to a pretty good start. So here are some recently announced or reported figures for some of the services in the US, ranging from a couple of million to 500,000, and I would argue that these services are doing pretty good. So in the context of a US pay TV market that is now around 90 to 100 million subscribers, these are of course small numbers, but if we were to add up all the different SLIN services in the US, we're looking at a figure between 30 to 40 million subscribers are taking what I would deem to be linear TV platforms delivered over the internet. So the upshoot of all of this, all those logos, Netflix and all the other services, is that we're looking at a market that is incredibly crowded. And of course, it is dominated by just a few big players in the US. Netflix, Amazon, and Hulu are the big three, of course. But I mentioned self-bundling, and it seems to us that the world of online video is one that seems to sustain a whole range of services. Okay, US, of course, is the most advanced market of its kind today, and there are literally more than 100 SVOD or linear premium OTT services available there. For a purpose, you cannot see how big they are, but they're all at the bottom, a couple of millions, couple of 100,000 subscribers. And I think this shows that this idea of self-bundling, it is something that is sustaining a market with multiple operators and services at the moment. That might not be the case in a couple of years' time, so watch this space. I prepared a slide, and I was told this is incredibly confusing and no one will understand it. I think it's pretty, I'm an analyst, so I'm biased, but if we start from that side, we've got Ovum's US TV forecast. It's all looking at subscribers here, cable, satellite, and IPTV, and then OTT guys on the side. So with the rise of OTT services, the first sort of take on this is, oh, this is going to lead to consumers canceling their pay TV subscriptions. That argument of cord cutting, we believe, has been largely overstated, partly or largely because there is a sense of coexistence here. Many pay TV customers also take out Netflix and Amazon and other services. So this is the pretty picture that we are today. We've got pay TV. Oh, it's going to still be here for the next 5 years at least. There is marginal decline across the key TV platforms. At the same time, there's quite good growth for Netflix and Amazon, Hulu, and other services, as well as the SLIN services that I described. This is the situation today, based on what we know today, but I think the interesting thing is going to be what happens in the next 3 to 5 years. And I'll return to that in a second. But so if we're looking at these evolving audience buying habits, clearly the emphasis of the market, whatever word you want to use to describe it, the focus, is arguably moving from one that is dominated by pay TV towards SVOD and ultimately towards SLIN services or linear TV platforms on the internet. So bearing in mind that there is coexistence between these platforms, there are some there's another way to look at the same chart. So again, subscriber numbers only are forecasts. So SVOD is there are already more SVOD subscribers in the US than pay TV subscribers. That happened back in 2016. Pay TV, as I said, is largely on a flat trajectory. It might have reached a plateau, but it's not expected to decline much further in the next few years. And then, of course, SLIN platforms, which are coming. And we believe that just based on very conservative forecasting of the sort of numbers that are reported, the services available, and how they appeal to consumers, we think that SLIN services are going to slowly grow and ultimately exceed pay TV in the US in the next few years. Okay, so I'm just going to wrap up quickly. It's quite clear to me that OTT viewing has become a mainstream or mass market proposition, certainly across most mature markets, not just Americas, North America and Western Europe, but Latin America, Eastern Europe, Asia, and Middle East and beyond. The only market or region of the world that is behind today is Africa, but even there we're starting to see these sort of platform coming and uptake slowly starting to happen. So, as I said, TV seems to be reinventing itself for an online future. And the most likely format that we've seen emerge so far is linear OTT, essentially pay TV delivered over the internet. Who would have thought it, you know? However, there are no signs that pay TV consumers are going to migrate from their traditional TV platforms to online just yet. But the big question really is, how will the appearance of these SLIN platforms, linear OTT services, impact on the current situation? I think that's the biggest, probably biggest question faced by our industry today. So I don't have an answer today. I expect the so-called pretty picture to change radically over the next few years. What is clear is that we have coexistence on one hand, SVOD and pay TV. When we see these new skinny bundles appear, I think it's unlikely that we're going to see the same level of coexistence. If you're already paying for an expensive pay TV package, you're not going to pay for a similar one online. And another thing that we know for sure is that there are more of these services coming, particularly outside of North America. Most operators that we work with at Ovum are not considering doing this. They're already in a go-to-market phase. And the game changer really has been, if we look back a few years, fears of cannibalization was the key reason why they weren't launching these services. That's no longer the case. They've got over that point. They are, companies are now looking to move to this platform. So, in closing, I believe that the shape of TV is likely to be decided over the next few years. And there's clearly demand for these services, and soon they will be available everywhere. And that's me. So we do have time for a few questions.
Time for a question or two. Does anyone have a question for Tony on this? Gentleman up in the middle there, I think there's a roving mic. If you could just say your name and company before, that would be great.
Hi, Ross Appleton, ITV. Your data there was obviously very US-centric. Yeah. I wondered how you saw this playing out in a UK market, which doesn't have quite the same drop-off in cord cutting and pay TV.
Yeah, sure. So the key thing is in the US, these SLIN or linear platforms have been more aggressive in being launched. Okay, so we don't really have the same level of skinny bundle type services. But what's clear to me is that pay TV operators like Sky, with Now TV, has already launched these services. I think US trends always happen a few years before international. UK is perhaps the exception, tends to follow quite closely to what happens in the US. But we're broadly speaking, the same trends that we see in the US are being replicated internationally. So it's a short answer, but
we'll have a chance to dig into the topic slightly more on the panel as well. So, one last question, and we'll have to crack on with the morning as well. Right.
Hi, Tony. Bill Gash at CSG. Just looking at the chart you showed up, showing 100 different SVOD services and SLIN services. In your view, what's going to be the success factors? What's going to help businesses be successful in terms of how they differentiate themselves? If you're thinking of that future and the consolidation that you're forecasting, what is going to make some businesses winners and others losers?
So, if we look at what's been the success factor behind Netflix, it's not, it's been twofold. One, the tech side, one, the content. It looks and feels like the next generation type, platform. The content has also been, broadly speaking, cutting edge, forward-looking, more sex, more violence, etc., etc. I think consumer uptake of online services, is driven by a bit of both. And the thing with many SLIN services, particularly the sports ones, are that they can, provide more camera angles, more interactive features, a better way to, for consumers to find the content on the service and how they watch it, and perhaps ultimately even changing the actual viewing experience. And I think that is, if you can do that, then you're probably more likely to be more successful than others.
Well, thank you very much, Tony. I think we're, if everyone could give Tony a round of applause. Thanks so much. Stay.